Okay, well, good morning, and thank you so much for coming to our installment today for our Gator Success Workshop entitled Stress and Mental Health. My name is Jason Holliday, and I currently serve as the Associate Director of the Gator Success Center here at the University of Houston downtown, and we're very delighted that you have joined us today for this and very important workshop. We know that it is the month of October. This is our first workshop in the month of October, but it also happens to be around the time where the university is starting to give many exams, midterms, things of that nature. And we are going to be joined by our wonderful staff member here, who is representative of our counseling services here at the University of Houston downtown. And we're going to be talking about everything stress and mental health related. If you have a question or if you have a comment or a concern or anything, feel free to use that raise hand feature or drop a like or a message in our chat feature here in the Zoom, and we will go ahead and answer any questions that you may have regarding stress and how to maintain your mental health. Before we begin and I introduce and give our presenter the floor, I just wanted to kind of put this quote out here, and it says that the mind is just like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it gets and the more it can expand. So when we're talking about your mind and we're talking about the stress that comes along with being a college student, being able to talk and have those meaningful conversations with not only staff members, different people here at the university, such as a faculty member or anyone, the more that we're able to talk about the stressors in our life is the better that we can put our minds in a better mental health state. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and allow our presenter, Mr. Tim Coulter, who works in our counseling services, to go ahead and talk to us about all things stress and mental health related. So Tim, the floor is yours. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome. Happy to be here. Great introduction.
Thank you.
You know, Jason, I've recognized this about you, and for all of you listening, I hope you have too. He has a very commanding voice.
I try.
For our group.
See, I'm trying to get the
camera
on you so you can be on. Okay, now it's still on me. Okay, maybe if I walk out, I'm gonna walk out the front. Okay, and then it'll be stuck on you. Okay. Is it on you now?
Yes, now it's on me.
Okay.
It says it moved a little bit. All right, so as Jason said, my name is Tim Coulter. I work with UHD Counseling Services. What our department does, of course, is service all of your mental health needs for those of you that come and see us. Today, what we're going to be talking about specifically is stress. So don't let your stress make a mess. Presented by me for the Gator Success Center. So the quick agenda, and I'm definitely going to leave time for questions from all of you and for those of you joining via Zoom. But a quick agenda: we're going to talk about stress, we're going to talk about mental health, and we're going to talk about self-care. And as Jason mentioned, if you have any questions as we go through this, feel free to speak up and interrupt me, or ask them via chat, or use the raise your hand feature. So a couple statistics for you guys before we dig into the presentation. I wish these were better statistics. 9%, it's a small number. Only 9% of college students report that they experience no stress or less than average stress. So that means 81% of college students experience average, more than average, or an extreme amount of stress. So if you're experiencing stress, you're not alone. It happens quite frequently, quite often. And unfortunately, as we'll learn in a little bit, it's not addressed nearly enough. The second number on here, 70% of US students are concerned about their financial health. That's one of the sources of stress for them. I'm sure many of you can imagine that you're going to college to get more money out in the real world. You want a degree that's going to get you a job that's going to mean a bigger salary, something along those lines. So not only do you have the stress of the future and the hope that the degree that you get is going to actually accomplish that goal, but you also have the stress of, well, how am I paying for college? How am I going to pay that back if it's loans? So there's a lot of stress there about finances. The last number on here, 54% of surveyed mental health professionals, so that's people like me, believe that anxiety, stress, and depression are the top concerns for college students. I agree with this number, although I wasn't surveyed, but I do agree with the number. In my work with students at UHD, it seems like these three certainly present themselves a lot. In addition to these three, we also see a lot of, or at least I see a lot of students that come in with grief. They have a family member, a close friend, someone that passes away. I think that's very common. Kind of related to anxiety is rejoining the world after the pandemic. Everything was virtual for 2 years, and now things are kind of moving the opposite direction. And so that change, it's definitely related to anxiety, but that social anxiety of actually being around people, I would add to this list is something that I see quite often. So you may ask, well, is stress always bad? So we're going to start with that balloon. I know it's not at the top, but we're going to start with that balloon. And the answer is no, stress is not always bad. The level of stress you feel and how you respond to it can be indicative of whether or not it's bad. I'm always hesitant to label things, but I will in this case. Small amounts of stress can actually be quite helpful, and they can make you more productive. They can help you with prioritizing time and help you get through things in a more efficient way. The second one, what is stress? Stress typically is how we respond to things that threaten us or are beyond our control. And so if we're in a situation where you could imagine you're in 100% control, you probably won't be very stressed. You're really prepared well for the test that you're about to take. Probably won't stress you out as much as if you weren't prepared. That's just one example, and there's many we could go through. But if we can't manage it or we can't control it, that is typically where stress starts to build. And sometimes we do this to ourselves. Two different types of stress that we're going to talk about just briefly are chronic stress and acute stress. Chronic stress, generally, by definition of the word chronic, is going to last for a long period of time. Sometimes this is intense, sometimes it's not as intense, but generally it's long lasting and it keeps coming back. For example, life of a college student, you have classes in the fall, classes in the spring, classes in the summer, you have a job, you have family issues, you have your romantic life, all these other challenges that you have to address. And kind of trying to attempt to address all these over a 1 year period can lead to higher levels of stress, and it sticks with you for the whole year, which means it's chronic. The other type of stress is acute stress. So acute stress can happen a few minutes or a few hours of an event, and that could be before or after an event. I'll use my own life as an example. In my early career, when I'd go on interviews, I was never stressed before the interview. I was always laid back, relaxed, went in, did what I needed to do. But for whatever reason, about 20 minutes after the interview, my stress just skyrocketed. I would be mean to the people around me. I would not be in a good mood. I wouldn't want to talk to anyone. I'd close myself off to the world. And it took a couple interviews to figure out that that's what was taking place. That's an example of acute stress. It usually lasts less than a few weeks, but it can be very intense if you experience it. So what does stress actually do to you? So people that experience stress, what are the side effects? And we're going to cover 3 different areas that kind of encapsulate the different areas of the body and overall well-being that could be impacted. The first, body. So stress can oftentimes lead to headaches, muscle tension, pain, chest pain, fatigue, changes in sex drive, stomach and gastrointestinal issues, sleep problems, high blood pressure, changes in menstrual cycle, panic attacks. And that's just to name a few. There's a much longer list that you can find if you do a little research of the physical effects stress can cause. It can also impact the mood, anxiety, restlessness, lack of motivation, focus, challenging feelings, feelings of being overwhelmed, irritability, anger, sadness, depression. Those are all uncomfortable, all challenging. And of course, the last area here is behavior. Behavior is an interesting one. So overeating, oftentimes people equate with sadness. Been broken up with, so I'm going to eat some ice cream, something like that. They can also be a sign of stress. Undereating is probably what I see more frequently. People will be just super stressed out, and so they'll forget to eat. There's so much going on, or they get nauseous when they eat, or just don't feel like eating because stress is just playing such a big role in their life. In addition to dietary habits, we have angry outbursts, drug and alcohol misuse, social withdrawal, and exercising less often. If you think about drug and alcohol misuse, there's a difference there than, come on in. There's a difference there, of course, than the way it's supposed to be. And if you're using alcohol or drugs as a way to decrease stress, I've got some bad news for you. It's going to work in the moment, but it's not going to help you long term because it's not going to do anything about the areas in your life that are stressing you out. So short-term pleasure or short-term relief, but long-term it doesn't help. And it can actually prevent you from building coping skills that you need to develop to address stress. But we'll talk about that in a minute. All right, so signs that you might be stressed. So a lot of stuff that you're going to see on this slide is going to be similar to what you saw on the last slide. The difference is the last slide is what it can actually do to you. This slide takes you being a little bit mindful about your behavior and how you present in the world. So signs you might be stressed out. You can become more irritable, more angry, more impatient, more wound up. And the reason I'm using the word more is the way that you have to look at it is it a divorce from what my normal behavior is? Like if I'm normally like super patient with every single person I meet, and then out of the blue, like I'm just yelling at strangers, like, or doing something that's really out of character. Now, if you're normally yelling at strangers, if you're normally super impatient, come see me, we can talk about that. But if you're normally the opposite, just super patient, and then you see this big change, that could be a signal that you're stressed. The second one on here, overburdened or overwhelmed, same thing. If you're normally like just super able to handle every single task you have, all the responsibilities, no problem. Then all of a sudden your responsibilities are the same, but you feel like you can't do it. Like I'm so overwhelmed with all the stuff I normally get done. That could be a sign that you're stressed. The third one, some anxiety, some nerves, some fear. Same thing. And we'll go through all these. If you're normally just, hey, I'm a hero and I can take on anything in the world with no fear, and all of a sudden everything is just terrifying. There could be lots of different things going on, but stress could be one of them. Racing thoughts, unable to enjoy yourself, depressed or uninterested in life, loss of a sense of humor, a sense of dread or impending doom, worrying or over worrying is probably a better way to describe that, feeling neglected or lonely. And the last one, existing mental health problems getting worse. I'm not going to talk about all these, but there are a few that I'm going to point out. So unable to enjoy yourself. For me, that's a really big one I look for when I'm trying to determine if someone is stressed, and in my own life, if I'm trying to determine whether I'm stressed. Because if you're generally able to enjoy yourself, and then all of a sudden you can't, in activities that you can normally enjoy. So let's say you love to, bowl. You love to go bowling. And all of a sudden you're bowling, you're like, I hate this. It's not fun at all, not enjoying it. That could be a sign that there's something taking place in your life, and stress could be one of the culprits. Another one I want to point out, loss of sense of humor. That's another big one. And again, if you're normally a really funny person, you take things light, people can tease you and you laugh at yourself. And then all of a sudden someone teases you and you're like at their throat, that's not funny, you're no longer my friend. Well, hey, this is a big change in behavior from how you normally present. And that could be a sign that some stress is present. The last one I want to point out on this list that may need a little explanation is the very last bullet point, existing mental health problems getting worse. So let's say you're already seeing a practitioner, you're taking some sort of medication for like depression or anxiety, something like that, or just doing talk therapy for depression or anxiety. And all of a sudden the coping skills that you've developed in therapy or the medication that you're taking isn't working any longer. You're at the same dose, you're using the same coping skills, and all of a sudden this depression that you have or anxiety that you experience just skyrockets. It could be a number of things, but stress, again, could be one of the main culprits. They've always called stress the silent killer. I don't know, I think that might be true because we all experience it to varying ranges and not all of us are great at dealing with it. And over a long period of time, think what I said earlier, that chronic stress, it can really take some impacts on the body. So some more statistics from you guys. Again, I wish the statistics I had in here were better, but hopefully they'll be eye-opening. So the first one, 61% of college students report receiving information about stress reduction from their school. For me, this is a disappointing number. And for all of you, you should be thankful that Jason is hosting events like this because hopefully it makes this number go up. And I think our industry, we need to do a better job. And by our industry, I mean higher education. Needs to do a better job of giving information like this out to students. Oftentimes someone feels super stressed and then they feel I'm alone. Everyone else seems like they're not stressed at all. They're walking around school smiling. They're doing all these different things that look fun and enjoyable. And I'm walking around with this giant weight on my back. And I have to be the only one experiencing this kind of stress. And that must mean there's something wrong with me. Well, no, they're also experiencing stress. They just may not be showing it outwardly. So I really wish that our industry would do a better job of giving information to students about stress, kind of normalizing it. For example. The second number on here, again, this is for me kind of a dismal number. So 20%, just over 20% of college students who sought mental health services. This is in 2018, so this is pre-pandemic. It'd be interesting to see what the 2022 numbers are like. But anyway, so only 20% got mental health services, did so through their college or university. Now this could be for a number of reasons. It could be that they're already seeing a provider elsewhere and they don't want to change the relationship. It could be that they don't know about their college's mental health services. In my experience, that's the culprit. I don't know how many students I've talked to at presentations like this, and they say, wait, I can get free unlimited therapy to talk about anything I want through the college. And yeah, you can. And it's like this, I don't know, it's like I just waved the magic wand. And just so many people don't know that we exist. And hopefully this number goes up. So the question becomes, what can I do about stress? And so at the beginning, you remember our agenda. This is the third item. So we talked about mental health, the impacts of stress. We identified what stress was and how it impacts your body and your emotions. But out of all the slides, this hopefully is the one that you guys find the most useful and the one that's most helpful. So we'll spend some time here. So we identified earlier, stress has impacts on emotion, mood, body. So you would think, well, the coping skills I need to address those areas. So let's talk about physical health first. And if you guys take nothing else from this presentation, take this first piece about exercising regularly. It has been well researched. There is not a pill on the market for depression that does a better job than exercising regularly and helping someone not feel depressed. And it well researched. And who knows, maybe one day they'll develop one, but thus far they haven't. And so if you feel a lot of stress, starting to get some exercise can be a great place to make the stress more bearable. But at the very least, you're doing something for yourself that gives your mind a break from all the stress that you're experiencing. When it comes to exercising regularly, sometimes I work with students who used to do it, and for whatever reason, they stopped doing it, and they find it hard to get back into it. Sometimes I work with students who just never did it, never thought exercise was important. Either way, finding an acceptable starting place, and that's going to be different for all of you. Maybe it's a 10-minute walk each day for 2 weeks, and after 2 weeks, increase it to a 20-minute walk. For some of you, if you're really familiar with exercise, maybe running 18 miles a day is a great place to start. Or maybe that's too much. But finding an acceptable starting place and then building on it is the way to reintroduce or introduce regular exercise into your life. If, again, you've never done it or fallen out of that habit of doing it. So after you find your acceptable starting place, and a key there is being gentle with yourself. So let's say I say something like, look, hour a day. Never exercised before in my life, but I'm gonna start with an hour a day. I'm gonna do 30 minutes of cardio, 30 minutes of weights, and that's my goal. So I start on day one and I get 10 minutes in and I'm like, whew, I'm exhausted. This hour a day, that's not gonna work. And then I never go back to the gym because typically what's gonna happen is because I didn't meet my goal of an hour, I'm gonna think, well, I couldn't do my goal. And so I guess I'm never gonna be able to reach my goal. So I might as well not do it and give up. And so the second component after finding an acceptable starting place is being gentle with yourself if you don't reach the goal that you set for yourself. Okay, I wanted to do 60 minutes, I could only do 10 minutes. Instead of being hard on myself, I'm going to acknowledge that, hey, at least I could do 10 minutes. Maybe tomorrow I can do 10 minutes again. And you refine what you mean by having an acceptable starting place. And then again, you build on that. So, and maybe the next day you go and you find that you can do 15 minutes. Awesome, well, tomorrow I'll try 10 minutes again. I'll give myself a stretch goal of 15 minutes if I have the energy. Then you just slowly build on that and you work exercise into your life in that way. The second one on here, relaxation techniques. This will take shape differently.
Yes, ma'am.
Lucy K. Let me go ahead. I can put on mute. It's cool. My apologies.
No, it's all good.
Okay, she's on mute.
Okay, perfect. So the second one on here, relaxation techniques. So relaxation techniques will take shape differently for each of you. Like it's, again, well researched in all the yoga material that, hey, welcome. That just sighing, like the act of sighing, can reduce stress in the moment. Now, there's techniques way beyond that. Some people meditate for an hour a day and beyond. They do different breathing exercises. They do different things that help them relax. An example of this would be progressive muscle relaxation, where you tense all the muscles in your body. You either start with the head or start with the feet, and then you untense them. So you start with your toes, tense, and then you kind of go up your body, and then you kind of tense, release, tense, release, tense, release. So things like that you can do over a long period of time. Hey, I'm going to do progressive muscle relaxation for 20 minutes. Or you can do it very shortly. Hey, I'm really stressed about this test, so let me just tense and relax myself in 30 seconds. And you can learn how to do that. And if these concepts or techniques sound completely foreign to you, come see me, and I promise you guys I can teach you how to do it. This next one, paying attention to nutrition. This is so often overlooked when it comes to physical health and stress. As we mentioned earlier, stress, one of the impacts is it affects eating. And so if you're super stressed, oftentimes you eat very little. Sometimes you eat way too much, just depending on you and how stress impacts the way that you eat. And typically in both those cases, if you're eating too much, you're either overeating. My guess is you're not overeating on nutritious food, but you're probably overeating on a bunch of junk food, cookies and ice cream, all these things that release feel-good chemicals right up here in the front of the brain because they feel good. And if you're super stressed, you want something that makes you feel good, and broccoli may not do that. I don't know enough about broccoli. It doesn't make me feel good when I eat it. So paying attention to nutrition. So if you can acknowledge by what we did earlier, you pay attention to the signals in your body that you might be stressed. You remember that slide? Paying attention to those and then asking yourself, okay, I know that I'm super stressed. I'm acknowledging that. What can I do to eat in a way that's conducive to reducing stress, that's easy on the body? Because if you're starving yourself, it's going to be very hard from a behavioral perspective to do anything about your stress, because you're not going to have energy, because you're starving yourself, you're not eating. And the opposite's also true. If you're overeating, you're going to feel bloated, you're going to feel some lethargy, you're not going to feel great because you're overeating. And if you're overeating a bunch of junk food, you're going to get this sugar high and then this crash that comes after it. And that's also not going to be conducive to managing stress in your life in a way that's good for you. But again, bring awareness to that, bring mindfulness. I had cookies 3 nights in a row. This 4th night, I'm going to eat some broccoli. I'm going to eat something that I enjoy, that's healthy, that's not just filled with sugar. And I'm not saying don't ever eat cookies, guys. That's not what I'm saying. But paying attention to nutrition, again, can make stress more manageable. If your body is healthy, and your body is feeling good because of what you put in it, you'll be more well equipped to address the stress in your life. So this very last one, guys, sleep, when it comes to physical health. And these are the most common ones. There's a whole list of physical health stuff, but sleep. And oftentimes when I work with students who are super stressed, almost like eating, it's like they're not getting any sleep at all. They either try to fall asleep and they can't, they fall asleep and then they wake up frequently, or they wake up early in the morning and can't go back to sleep the way that they normally would. So sleep. The other one, which I see much rarely, is oversleep. So they go to bed at 8 and they don't wake up until like noon the next day. I don't see that quite as frequently, but sometimes that's present with stress as well. Generally, I see the first one, not sleeping enough. There's lots of different things that you can do, and a therapist can really help you identify these to improve the quality of your sleep. Sleep is connected to everything else you see on this list: exercising, relaxation, and nutrition. If you're eating all those cookies at 9 p.m. before bed, well, you're gonna have all this sugar, it's gonna be hard to go to sleep, you're gonna have all these racing thoughts. And the first step, like I said earlier, is to be mindful. So if you know you're trying to sleep and you know you have all this stress in your life, and you have all these racing thoughts, asking yourself the question, well, what can I do about these thoughts now? And instead of trying to, often what the mind works very quickly, it's like a machine gun sometimes. And so taking those racing thoughts and trying to put them into a different medium. Let me grab a journal real quick. I wouldn't recommend using an electronic device because light stimulates the brain and will make it even harder for you to fall asleep. But if you have like one of those pens that have a light on it, or if you have a dim light next to your bed that you can kind of flip on and write down some of your racing thoughts, it's a way to get them from here onto something else. You know, another method that's, I don't know, this next method is not for everyone when it comes to sleep, but it is for some people, is not to go to bed until you're tired. And so if you're not feeling physically tired, don't go to sleep, stay up. You have all these racing thoughts and stress anyway. You can't sleep anyway. You might as well stay up and do something with it. And then once you get tired, you'll go to bed. Now that may be at 4 a.m. And here's the other component of this. Hold yourself accountable to wake up at the exact same time every day. So if you use this strategy, you got to remember that second component. So I'm going to wake up at 7 a.m. every single day, and I'm not going to go to bed until I'm tired. And you do that for about a week, your sleep will regulate itself because you're just going to be so tired. And the body will force you at that point to go to sleep. Again, that's not for everyone. Not everyone, especially college students, I find, can hold to that strict waking up time, whatever they decide for themselves. But yeah, so the next one, mental health. So make time to relax. Spend time in nature. Be kind to yourself. Build a support network. Organize your time and ask for help. Again, this isn't a complete list, and we'll go through them. We're good on time. Yeah, we'll go through them. So make time to relax. So the key word here is make. You know, oftentimes, like when people are stressed, the very first thing they sacrifice is the way they treat themselves. And then the second thing that goes up on that sacrificial altar is themselves. And what they should do is do the opposite. Hey, I know I'm really stressed, so I'm going to prioritize self-care. And there are some areas in life that have to be addressed. You know, I don't know, you have a loved one that needs care. Well, that probably has to be addressed. But if you're laying in bed at night and you can't do anything in the moment about the test 3 days from now, trying to use that time to relax instead of focusing on this test that you can't do anything about in the moment can be really helpful. But again, the key there is make. So make yourself a priority, prioritize self-care instead of just allowing yourself to spiral into this stress sort of ball. The second one, spend time in nature. Again, I know nature isn't for everyone, but it's well researched. Like sunshine helps us. It does. Being in nature helps us in general. I'm sure there's some people that much prefer to just be inside. But generally, for most of you, being in nature will help. But you got to find the time to do it, or rather make the time to do it. This third one on here, I think is maybe the second most important one on this mental health. Be kind to yourself. I don't know how many times I've had a student walk into my office and it's like they bring the weight of the world with them. 100-pound weight that they're just dragging around. And like I said earlier, with this giant weight on their back, the first thing they've done is sacrifice self-care. And the second thing they do is they judge themselves really harshly. Like I've always believed, you can take the worst person in the history of the universe, have them say the worst possible thing they can think of to you, and it probably doesn't come anywhere close to the mean things and judgmental things you say to yourself. And so becoming aware of those negative self-statements and finding a way to reframe them to be kind to yourself. So instead of saying something like, I'm so stressed out, I'm a stupid idiot and the worst person in the world, well, find a way to be kinder to yourself and say, well, I didn't do as well as I wanted to on the test, but that's because I didn't prepare like I wanted to. Because I didn't prepare, that means I could probably prepare a little bit better next time. So you take something that's super negative, you reframe it into something hopeful, well, it's going to diminish the stress. Because instead of experiencing depression, you're going to experience disappointment. And disappointment is much easier to get your arms around than depression. It's just another thing about be kind to yourselves. Build a support network. That one I think is important. This one and ask for help are kind of similar. But in building a support network and asking for help, finding people that you can trust is critical. Sometimes families aren't the best support network. I know everyone hates me. Don't say bad things about my family. That's not what I'm doing. But unfortunately, what I see frequently is that families have an invested interest in you. They want you to do what they want you to do, not what you want to do. Okay, well, now if you go to them for advice, are they going to give you advice based on what you want to do or on what they want you to do? Everyone has an opinion on your life. Right?
That's true, and maybe they're more judgmental than your friends.
Yes, precisely.
Yeah.
I can almost guarantee you they're more judgmental than your friends in the vast majority of cases, unless you have awful friends. Well, just think about it. Like friends they gain nothing by controlling you. Typically, like we're friends and I'm like, hey, do this and this and this and this. Eventually you're gonna get tired of that. I don't want to be that guy's friend anymore. He always tells me what to do. You can't do that with your family. They're still your family. You can remove yourselves from your family, but they're still going to try to tell you what to do. They want to control your life. You're going to be a doctor because I said you're going to be a doctor. Well, I want to be a social worker, Mom. There's going to be this conflict. And then you go down the social work path and you're struggling in class. I told you should have been a doctor. Well, that's not helpful. That's not going to be a supporting relationship.
Instead of having to more, your moral is going down.
Right. It's going to make your stress worse. Not only am I not doing well in my chosen degree, but Mom hates me too. Well, that's going to be even more stressful. So when you build a support network, when you ask for help, make sure that it's someone that you can trust. So friends can be really good for this, if they're honest friends. Sometimes friends like, man, forget about that breakup. You'll be okay. He was awful anyway. Well, how do I forget about the breakup? I'm in pain right now. So sometimes friends, they say things with good intentions, but it's not always helpful. If you think about, we'll get kind of dark for a second. If you think about someone in your life passes away, typically what people say, I'm so sorry. What are you sorry for? You didn't kill him. That doesn't help me. It doesn't help me that you're sorry. But we say things, the intention is good. The intention is good. They're trying to comfort you, but it doesn't always help decrease stress. And so finding people that will be honest with you in a gentle way and including them in your support work, I think is critical. The one on here I didn't address is organize your time. So there's lots of different ways to organize your time. Research suggests that doing the hardest things first is the best way to organize your time. In my experience with people, this is oftentimes very challenging. They wake up in the morning, they build their to-do list, and they find the hardest thing. Not a lot of people want to start their day like that. Now, if you can find a way to do it, it will be the most helpful way to get through your to-do list. But sometimes people also organize their time by doing the most urgent thing first, or they do it by easiest first. The challenge I have with the easiest first is you spend all this energy doing all these easy things, and then you get to the end of the day and you have something really hard to do, and your energy is diminished. So I think doing it one of the other two ways, either do the most urgent first, and that urgency can be defined by, well, what the thing is and whether or not there's a due date, or doing the hardest thing first, and sometimes be a way to reduce your stress. If you use all your energy on the hardest thing, well, maybe you still have a little bit of energy to knock out the easy things at a high level. And of course, if any of you guys need help with that, talk to us. So the last one on here, emotional health. Again, this isn't all-encompassing, but there's some good ones on here. Keep a sense of humor. This is one of my favorite things. I try not to take life too easily. One of the ways I tell I'm really stressed is when I lose my sense of humor. If I stop joking, if I start taking things super seriously, and some things need to be taken seriously. I'm not saying everything's a joke, but that can signal to me that I'm feeling stressed. And so trying to find a way to keep a sense of humor, even if it's making fun of myself, has been a good way to balance out the stress in my life. The second one, set aside time for hobbies such as reading or music. Sometimes people think they have a hobby that they're using for self-care that's not really self-care. And the main culprit here, I think, is competitive video games. So if you're out there, you're playing, I don't know, League of Legends, World of Warcraft, one of those, and Tim, it just relaxes me to go into this online environment and compete against other people. My guess is that it probably creates more stress for you. I've just heard too much about the competitive nature and the toxic sort of culture that exists online for video gaming specifically to make me believe that that's the way you're reducing your stress. Like I said earlier, sometimes we resort to like drugs or alcohol with stress. Again, that will provide a short-term benefit. I'm drunk, I'm not thinking about things in life, hopefully not thinking about the challenges, or I'm high, so I'm not thinking about this test. Well, short-term, that's going to give you a break, right? But then you wake up the next day, maybe hungover, maybe not, regretting the night before, and hey, all that stress comes right back to you. Yeah. And so what you've done is you've prevented yourself from developing perhaps a better coping skill at dealing with stress because you've resorted to this short-term sort of release or outlet, I guess you could say. So finding something else that is relaxing. So reading and music are the two examples listed here, because I think everyone can kind of see, okay, reading, music, those are things that a lot of people do. Maybe not reading so much because you're all students, you have to read for school, so maybe you're not reading for fun. But music is something a lot of people enjoy. But there's other things that can be a hobby. So perhaps you like drawing, some other creative endeavor, cooking, something like that. There can be lots of things that give you a break from the stress in your life that can become hobbies. This next one, spend time with family and friends. Again, like I said, for mental health, make sure it's supporting family and friends. You know, if you're around a family that you're always in conflict with, well, chances are that's going to increase your stress. So if you recognize that, hey, I'm really stressed out, I have to go to this person's birthday party who I really don't like, and I know there's going to be conflict there, maybe set a boundary and skip the party until you're better equipped from a mental health perspective to go. But if your family and friends provide a relaxing environment for you, that's not going to be anything that increases stress, then enjoy time with them. So this last one, this relates, I think, to probably everything on this list. So be clear with others and set boundaries. Oftentimes when we think about setting boundaries, we think about setting boundaries with other people. Like, hey, he's trying to do this to me and I'm set a boundary. I'm not picking on you, you just have to be in front of me. But oftentimes boundaries also mean setting boundaries with ourselves. So if we know we're, I don't know, a people pleaser, or someone that just says yes to everything. Well, one, if you say yes to everything, your yeses lose power. And everyone's just going to assume that you're always going to say yes. And then when you finally say no, it's going to create some chaos in your life. Needed chaos, perhaps. But setting boundaries with yourself. Like, hey, I really need to prioritize self-care. And I know there's this family birthday party that's going to stress me out, but I'm prioritizing self-care. And so I'm going to set a boundary with myself about what I'm willing to engage in. Like, we teach the people around us how to treat us. And we do that by setting boundaries with ourselves first. Like, I know I need to exercise. Man, that guy Timmy said exercise is better than any pill for depression. I know I need to exercise. I just don't feel like going to the gym. Hold yourself accountable. Set a boundary with yourself. Find an acceptable starting place and then build on it. So when to get help and who to get help from. So again, this isn't an all-encompassing list, but there's some things on here that we can expand on. So first one, pay attention. That's the easiest way to figure out when to get help. And I know stress sometimes, it's kind of like you sweep all these things under the rug, and eventually there's this giant monster underneath the rug that the rug can no longer contain. And stress can be like that sometimes, with all these little things that just add up that turn into this giant stress monster. And so pay attention. As previously, we went over a slide on how to identify whether or not I'm stressed. Well, pay attention to that. If you notice the changes that we outlined earlier, that can signal to you that stress may be becoming a big player in your life. The second thing to do is asking yourself whether or not the techniques that you've used before to manage stress are still working. So I always went to the gym, stressed, and now I'm still going to the gym and I'm still stressed. Well, then perhaps we need to add something else into your self-care routine. I was always able to talk to my best friend when I was stressed. And now I talk to my best friend and I leave the conversation more frustrated than when I started. Okay, well then perhaps we need to add something else, maybe another person, some hobby, something like that, into that routine to give you a new technique. The good news is you don't have to do this with a therapist. If you have a good sense of what in life gives you sort of a stress-free space, do that more. Add into it from what we've identified here. And of course, if you need help from a therapist, you see the third bullet point on here, UHD counseling services. In just a second, I'll show you a slide with who the therapists on campus are. If you don't like the look of any of us, there are therapists. We're downtown. There's community resources. There's lots of other therapists in the city of Houston. So there's people that can help you. More importantly, though, when it comes to stress, I think this second bullet point is key. You know, if none of your coping skills are working, none of them, find someone that you can trust who's going to support you, that you can talk to. And again, that doesn't have to be a therapist. It can be a friend. It can be, in the last bullet point mentions, a peer mentor or advisor. You know, go find Jason. Jason, man, I got to talk to you about this stress. He's going to say, go talk to Tim. But on campus, there's lots of people to talk to. I don't know how many times I've had a student in my office that has said, this XYZ faculty or staff member has been so helpful. I can just talk to my professor after class and they always give me great advice. But now it's time to come see you. Great. Or I've been able to talk to this staff member and they're just such a great outlet. Awesome. So finding someone that cares about you, wants what's best for you, I think that's how you define a good friendship and probably a healthy relationship, and that you feel comfortable talking to. And my guess is that if they want the best for you and care about you, you'll feel comfortable talking to them. That's my hope, at least. I know it's not always like that. So who are the counselors? Like, we have a little bit of time. I'll still some time for some questions here in a minute. So who are our counselors? So these are the 5 of us. Tamara and myself, we've been here since the counseling center opened last year. Zoe came on in about April, Tiffany and Eva, July and August. We also have a new director who's not pictured. We all see clients. Oh, I guess I should get to that screen before I talk about it. We all see clients Monday to Friday, generally 8 to 5. A lot of students I've found want to see us between 9 and 4. Those are typically the hours. Every once in a while, we have a student who wants a late session or an early session, although I haven't had very many that want a session before 9. I don't know, you guys like to wake up late, I guess. But typically this is when we see clients Monday to Friday. Our main office is located in South 280. So for those of you that are familiar with the food pantry, we're right next to that. In between the food pantry and the construction or the concrete lab is where we're located. But we have a second location. So our location downstairs, it's not big enough for all of us. And so we're also in South 601. So on the 6th floor, where University College Advising used to be, for those of you who are familiar with University College. There's lots of different ways to make an appointment. The easiest way would probably be to use email. If you call, like we're all very busy, our administrative assistant included. So if you call, leave a voicemail with what your intention is, why you're calling, and how to get back in touch with you, and she will. But you can also email us. We also have a website, uhd.edu, search counseling services. It'll bring you to us. On that website, on the bottom right, there's a link to a platform called Clockwork. Clockwork is the database that we use for all of our scheduling, all of our note-taking, all of our intaking, all of those types of counseling things. We use a separate database because no one can see our notes except for us. We're not allowed to tell the school or the administrators or faculty or your friends or your family or anyone else what it is we talk about. The way the process works, step 1, either after you call us, email us, or go to our online page. Step 1 would be to, there I am. Felt like I lost myself on screen.
That's going crazy.
Step 1 would be to fill out an intake. Now, the intake generally is going to take you somewhere between 5 and 15 minutes, depending on how much you like to write. Some students write just very short sentences on the different questions that are there. Some students write whole paragraphs, and that's totally up to you. However much information you want to give us is fine. That's the first step. After the intake is complete, Samantha, our admin, she'll get a message, a new intake to review. All she does is make sure that the student ID you entered matches the student ID in the system. As long as it does, she approves the intake and then she contacts you. Intake's been approved. The next step is to schedule an appointment. Scheduling an appointment, you can either do it with her. Here's my availability. I can only see counselors on Thursday between 12 and 4. That's my availability. Okay, and then she'll find one of us who has availability at that time and book you with whoever has availability. The other way, and the probably more flexible way, is to go back to the same page where you filled out the intake. There's another tab on there that says appointments. You can click that tab, you can look at me and the other 4 counselors that I showed you previously. You can look at all of our schedules and pick a time and date that works for you and set the appointment down there. Again, like I said at the beginning, it's free, it's unlimited, and it's private. Our licenses prevent us from telling anyone what you tell us. There are some exceptions to that. I feel bad, so bad I'm picking on you, man. You're just right in front of me. So I'll pick on someone on the screen. So one of you out there on the screen comes and tells me you're going to kill yourself. Well, obviously I have to protect your life and I have to break confidentiality. But outside of that and 4 other areas that this presentation is not about, we will keep everything you talk to us about confidential. Hate your math teacher. We're not going to go tell your math teacher. Don't like your mom. We're not going to tell her. It's all good. You can come and talk to us about anything except for a few areas. We will keep that private. Okay, so that being said, that kind of brings us to the end of the formal end of the presentation. I wanted to turn it over to you that joined us virtually, and of course you that are here, for any questions that you might have. They can be about stress, anything we talked about, our center, or anything else. Well, anything else mental health related. Actually, in some areas I can't provide an answer, but you know.
Do you provide which foods are good to, like you say, broccoli, avoid sugars? That's just your advice to improve your, because sugar is make like higher, and when you are in stress, it give you more stress and obesity plus, right?
Mm.
So, but there are some research in some fruits or veggies, which kind of is good when you are having stress to eat.
Yeah,
What do you recommend them?
so that is an area that my knowledge does not extend to. I'm not a nutritionist.
Because
in
more
that
is
regards.
nutrition, right?
But that's a great point. Like there are specific foods that are known to release some sort of relaxation.
I read like research is good in nuts, for example, for your brain. Since we are students and most of
Mm.
the students we are working and be a student at the same time, manage your life, and sometimes your brain is need like nuts, avocado, like this.
Healthy fats,
Yeah,
things like that.
healthy fats than
Well,
instead
and
of.
I think the key there is knowing yourself. Like if you know that, hey, when I feel great after I eat like some salmon and some pasta and some broccoli and all
Yeah,
this
salmon.
food plus dessert, and that's where I feel at my best, we'll do that. But if
Just
that's where you
listen-
feel at your worst,
Listen your
don't do
body.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so listen to your body, be mindful. Great question.
All right. Thank you. It was helpful.
Awesome. Yeah, glad you found it helpful. Any other questions?
I have a question. Let's just say that your coping mechanism is shopping. Is that like, would you say that that's kind of like bad, or is that overdoing that to try to keep your mental health at bay and not be as stressed? Like,
It's make you feel, but it's kind of deceiving because you are going to spend a lot of in shopping and then you buy things that you don't need it.
Yeah.
And then at the end you will have more stress because the amount of the money you are spending will be, if it's your cash, it's okay, but it's with credit card. The rate of interest will be never like end.
And I think to answer your question directly, you know, there's this term that floats around social media, they call it retail therapy.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there's also sorts of misguided therapy terms on social media that I wish wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
That water down our profession. And one of them is retail therapy. And I think so similar to your answer about nutrition, you know, knowing yourself. So if you're like, hey, I'm really stressed out right now, and I, went to the gym for 10 minutes a day for the last 7 days, so I'm going to reward myself with whatever by going shopping. Well, that could be a good piece of like your overall self-care.
Yeah.
But this is where knowing yourself really comes in. And if you know that pleasure you get from spending money and buying things is like intoxicating and addicting, well, then that can lead down a dark road potentially. Unless you got that Bill Gates.
Because I had that kind of therapy going to shopping, and then I asked myself, oh, I'm so stupid. Why I bought this? I don't need it. I need to return when my conscience is like now in stress. I say, I don't need that. I don't need. So I have to return. So, but
Which creates more stress.
Yeah.
Gas
you have to spend gas,
So,
time.
check my bank account for the
No,
refund, or
that's-
is it?
It's good that you talk about that to manage your stress. I mean, when you are stressed, okay, look, if you want to go shopping, make a list and don't buy just your list. This control me what I need.
Hey, welcome, come on in. Yeah, great question. Oh,
Yeah.
retail therapy.
Yeah.
I had a client once a long time ago, and every time that this individual got stressed, they would come and see me like, Tim, I'm so stressed out. Okay, well, what'd you do for self-care? Well, bought 3 more pairs of shoes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that was back in private practice. I'm like, well, I'm glad you can still pay for these sessions, you know? But that was on repeat. And then this person would just have a closet filled with shoes that they very rarely wore. And well, I know there's a secondary market for shoes, but my guess is they probably didn't get back what they paid for them. And it became more stressful for her because, well, now I'm buying all these shoes. I have a closet filled with them that I never wear. I'm looking at all the money that I spent over the years engaged in this behavior, and I'm really regretting it. Kind of like what you said, she judged herself for it.
Yeah, I
And then
have.
that judgment
And
is
makes
gonna be
you
stressful.
more tremendous migraine. So I started to avoid that, and then I found, for example, when I get stressed, I need to go to swim. So I need to be around my doesn't
Be in that, yeah.
yeah, be in my just my connection with the water and focus on that. And then it's relaxed me for I find that it's good. I lost like 5 pounds doing it like twice a week.
Good for lots of
It
days.
is.
Yeah.
Great question. Is there anyone else who's on our Zoom right now, or anybody here in person will have any questions? We're on the tail end of our workshop, but we'll stay a little bit afterwards to kind of entertain any questions when we formally like sign off and everything. But does anybody have any other questions?
You included. I mean, you just came in, we're talking all about stress, mental health and self-care.
Well, I garden, so
Oh, okay.
that's what helps me. I also go to therapy. That also helps.
Yeah, both awesome ways to address stress and a number of other things. Yeah, be in nature, right?
If you're with us and you're on Zoom or here in person, please go ahead and scan the QR code that is located in the front of our presentation. Right now on your screens, we have a QR code that gives us information on how to make our workshops more interactive, better for the future, and just leave us a question, leave us a comment to try to make our workshops better for the future. Just a few announcements just before we kind of wrap up. This ends our first half of our Gator Success workshops for this part of the semester. So next week, we will not be having any Gator Success workshops, but we will be coming back the following week and talking about communication skills. So we talked about everything about reaching for success, goal setting and time management, study skills, navigating to elevation, and stress and mental health. But we're going to shift gears and talk about communication. And then we'll also welcome back our Counseling Services Center later in the semester to talk about some more things. But on October 19th, we will be having our communication skills workshop from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. We would love to have you a part of this discussion when we're talking about how to effectively communicate. And I think that's something that is very important for our students here at the university. If you haven't already, please follow us on all of our social media platforms at uhd.gsc for more updates. This presentation will be uploaded on our YouTube channel as well. So subscribe to our YouTube channel at the Gator Success Center and follow us on social media for anything that we're doing at the Gator Success Center. I see that we do have one question in the chat, and it says, I'm happy to see that this is addressed. We tend to overlook stress just going through the motions. So thank you. Well, Rissa, thank you so much for that comment. And that is really amazing. And thank you so much for that compliment and telling Tim. Tim is the man, in case you didn't know, Tim is the man. So he is full of wealth and knowledge on all things counseling and therapy and everything. So if you have any questions, like he said, please go visit him and schedule an appointment if you can, if he's not too busy, in South 280 or our other counseling services representatives in South 601. Right. Also, another announcement before, I know I'm kind of rambling at this point, but if you're part of a professor and a professor's class and you were coming to our workshop today for extra credit, please send me an email to holidayj@uhd.edu and I will go ahead and send a confirmation for you saying that you attended. So please go ahead and send an email to me at holidayj. I can type really fast while I'm talking. At holidayj@uhd.edu, and I will go ahead and send a confirmation to you and the professor saying that you participated and that you were here today. If you want one of these Gator World t-shirts, and if you like a kind of, yeah. Sorry, that was kind of where I just had it open. If you want one of these Gator World t-shirts coming from us at the Gator Success Center, we'll provide you with the Gator World t-shirt for participating and being here today. Do we have any other questions or anything as we wrap up? Anything? In virtual land, in the Zoom? I want to thank our peer mentors, Buzi K, Yahira, as well as Raina Romero for coming today and being a part of our discussion and having their mentees invited here. Thank you all who have participated. Again, October 19th is going to be our communication skills for workshop from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Same room, same Zoom information and all of that. If you have any questions, feel free to come to the Gator Success Center, the Counseling Services Center. We want to thank you so much for participating today in our workshop, and we hope that you all have an awesome day. Thank you so much and take care, everyone. Thank you.
I was waiting.
Thank you.
I guess.
Now, everybody.